Hello, and welcome to another episode of BrettCasts Movie and TV Talk. Yeah, it's been about a month or so since the last one of these. I would apologize, but there hasn't been much of interest of me to do videos on anyway. Anyway, I know I'm late to the party on this movie, but I finally got around to watching the Pixar animated movie, Soul. Now, the last animated movie that I talked about was back in July, and that was the Disney movie Onward. I don't talk about animated movies that much because they're kind of predictable. Also, there will be spoilers for this movie. To be honest, the main reason I wanted to see Soul is because of my love of jazz music, so that's what I wanted to talk about to start with, is the jazz music. There really was not a whole lot of jazz music in it. It's not like it was disappointing because I liked the jazz music that I did hear. I just kind of wanted more of it. Is really a lot more boring electronic music in this movie. I'll have to get into the movie more to tell you about that. The premise of Soul happens really quickly. The main character is a jazz musician and is in the middle of school band, or he's a middle school band teacher. At the beginning of the movie, our main character, Joe, gets the news that he can work full-time teaching at the school he's at. Problem is he doesn't really want to teach, but wants to play gigs at clubs and stuff. His mom even wants him to get the school job to have job security and all that. A friend calls Joe and tells him that he can land a gig with this big-time jazz musician, so he goes and plays for her, and he lands the gig. Joe is so ecstatic that he immediately calls people and then ends up falling down a manhole, and he dies because he wasn't paying attention to what he's doing. This happens in the first 10 or so minutes of the movie. This is where things get interesting because we go to the Great Beyond. Yep, Joe's soul is about to enter death itself. But, of course, Joe goes all, I'm not supposed to be here. Tries to run away and then falls off the little conveyor belt thing and then falls through the opening credits of the movie. Soul Joe lands in what the movie calls the Great Before. It's the place where new souls are given things like personality and basically their Earth pass. This is a pass that allows new souls to go to Earth and inhabit bodies and stuff. Soul Joe tries to go through the portal to Earth, but it doesn't work. What Soul Joe does is becomes a mentor to new souls and has to attend a U seminar to see what new soul he gets paired with. Of course, he gets paired with the new soul that has gone through 6 previous mentors and refuses to want to go to Earth, and that is 22. Yes, new souls just get numbers, no names. Okay, I'm going to try to shorten things here. Soul Joe does tell 22 that he just wants to get back to his body so he can play his gig. Soul Joe tries everything to get 22 its Earth pass, but nothing works. So 22 introduces Soul Joe to some kind of really out there people, and also something that I will talk about later, the lost souls. So these people help Soul Joe to visualize where his body is, which is in a hospital. Soul Joe gets all excited, and he jumps for his body and drags 22 with him. Unfortunately, 22 lands in Joe's body, and Soul Joe lands in the therapy cat that was laying on his body in the hospital. From there, the movie is pretty much 22 getting to experience life as human Joe, and Joe is stuck as a cat. By now, you're probably wondering where the conflict of the movie comes into play. Well, the conflict is that the counter, Terry, counts all the souls going into the Great Beyond, notices that the count is off by 1. He figures out it's Soul Joe and thus goes to Earth with intentions to bring Soul Joe back to the Great Beyond. That's literally the entire conflict of the movie. Even at this point, when 22 decides that it basically wants to stay in Joe's body, Terry traps them and makes them go back to the soul world, or worlds. Now, the other beings in the Great the Great Before, who are all called Jerry, congratulates Soul Joe for mentoring 22 and getting it its Earth pass, and that Soul Joe can see 22 off to Earth. After he does, he has to go back to the Great Beyond. And by this point, Soul Joe accepts his fate. But no, one of the Jerrys tells Soul Joe that they were so inspired by him that they're giving him a second chance And he takes it, and the movie is over when Joe says, "I'm going to live my life to the fullest." Now, the lost soul thing. This is one aspect of the movie that I didn't care for, and that's because of the way that lost souls are described as. They say in the movie that the two things that makes it so a soul becomes lost is anxiety and becoming so obsessed with something that they leave Earth. There's air quotes around that. And their visual example is a soul that was like metal detecting, and then that soul just becomes a lost soul. The reason I don't particularly like this is because, in my opinion, there's different aspects to becoming obsessed with something. To me, the obsession side of a lost soul really only focuses on people who have an obsession that is unhealthy. And I think that, like, a person who is for example, think of a person who is so obsessed with aspects of the Elder Scrolls Online video game that they spend so much on microtransactions that they go into debt, lose their car, house, job, etc. But on the flip side, I feel like it could be it could be a healthy obsession with a person who pours all their free time into the game but stays on top of their bills, doesn't let it affect their job, and spends a ton less on microtransactions, maybe once in a few months or whatever. To me, the way they describe it and visualize it in the movie, it's like they're saying that any obsession is bad, and that's it. Add to that there's a part in this movie in which 22 becomes a lost soul, but when 22 is a lost soul, it keeps saying things like, "Everyone hates me, I don't have a purpose, I'm better off not being born." And to me, because I have personal experience with this, to me, those things sound like things that I've said when I'm depressed. And the thing is that Joe never says directly any of this to 22. And that's something that, depression will do, is that it can take things that a person might say one way, but turn them into something way more negative than it should have been. So to me, lost souls, as the movie calls them, are more people who struggle with mental health issues. Again, this is just all how I interpreted it, so no comments on me being wrong or right, because we all interpret this stuff differently. The obsession thing, because, again, with the metal detecting, to me it's like, well, what's the difference between, someone who enjoys metal detecting and someone who enjoys model building, right? They're just hobbies. Like, is it trying to say that if you get into something, you're literally only going to think about that 24/7, and there's never going to be anything else that you can ever do? And the metaphor of leaving Earth, I don't really like it. Now, something I'm really not sure of is the ending of the movie. It's just Joe saying that he's going to live his life to the fullest, and that's it. Sure, there was the 1-minute montage of Joe playing the great big gig that he was all excited for, but I just kind of wish that was at the end of the movie. The entire movie, Joe spends trying to get back to his body so he could play that gig, and that gig was the big deal for him. Imagine if the big performance at the end of Whiplash happened in between the middle and the ending of the movie. It would feel like the big payoff. It wouldn't feel like the big payoff that it was. And that's what the ending of Soul needed, was to either have... I have a couple ideas on this. Okay. What needed is A, a big performance, or B, some way that Joe meets the whatever body that 22 inhabited when it got to Earth. Perhaps, my idea is go years down the line when Joe is older, have him playing a performance, and have one of the people in the crowd be whatever, body that 22 got to inhabit. some sort of payoff, more so than just, I'm gonna live my life to the fullest. Like, I get that they were trying to go for an inspirational ending, but it just didn't feel like a lot of payoff for Joe or 22. Finally, when I brought up the music earlier, so the Soul Worlds has this kind of boring, generic electronic music, like, the kind that movies use when they're trying to be thought-provoking. The scenes in New York were accompanied by really good jazz music, but there were not that many scenes like it, and it just left me wanting more of the jazz music, but we spend too much time with, the boring electronic music. Overall, Soul does a lot. There's 2D and 3D animation happening at the same time, and it's really well done, but that's expected with a Pixar movie. It has its funny moments too, but again, it's kind of to be expected. It's a Pixar movie. If you've seen a Pixar movie, then you know what to expect by now. Soul is a good and enjoyable movie. That's all I have to say, so if you want to add to the conversation, leave a comment below. As always, thanks for listening, and goodbye.